September 11th, 2001. We all remember where we were. We saw the fire. We saw the towers come crashing down. But what we couldn't see, what none of us could see, was the real weapon of that day. And it wasn't a plane. It was an invisible enemy, unleashed in the dust, that would keep attacking for the next 25 years. That cloud? It was a toxic soup of everything imaginable. Pulverized concrete, glass, asbestos, lead, jet fuel, you name it. And it settled right into the lungs of more than 100,000 people. For them, 9/11 never ended. They've been fighting a second war, a war against their own bodies. And believe it or not, a third war, this one in the hallways of Washington, just to get the healthcare they need to stay alive. So, today we're gonna break down how that third war was just won, but why it's still far from over. We'll get into the crisis that almost completely destroyed the program, let's call them hallway warriors who forced to victory, the sharp political moves that made it happen, and the brand new shadow war that's just getting started. Okay, so to really get a handle on this huge victory that just happened, we have to rewind a bit. We've got to understand the ticking time bomb that was set to go off and basically blow up the entire program. So let's go back to 2015. The advocates, they score what they think is this massive permanent win for the World Trade Center health program. The fight's over, right? Wrong. Buried in the details was a fatal flaw, a tiny piece of math that was about to cause a huge problem. See, the funding was linked to a fixed inflation rate, but in the real world, healthcare costs were absolutely exploding. The formula just couldn't keep up. And the result? Well, the program was just hurtling towards a financial cliff. The numbers were stark. By the end of 2026, the money would be so low they'd have to start turning people away. Just try to imagine that. You get a cancer diagnosis linked to 9/11, you finally go for help, and the door is shut in your face. Sorry, you're too late. Unbelievable. And let's be crystal clear about the scale of this thing. We're talking about a $3 billion shortfall. Yeah, with a B. This wasn't some minor miscalculation. It was a massive, program-killing black hole. And that $3 billion, it's not just a number on some government ledger. It's the lifeline, the literal lifeline for over 150,000 people. These aren't just New Yorkers either. They're first responders and survivors living in every single state. And they count on this program to stay alive. And if you can believe it, it actually gets worse. The whole thing was getting hit by what you could only call a double whammy. Right as medical costs were going through the roof, a whole new wave of patients started showing up. And you have to ask, why now? Well, it's because many of these 9/11-related cancers have a long fuse, a 20 to 25-year latency period. That fuse is burning out right now. That invisible enemy is just now showing its full devastating face. Now, a crisis this big, it's not going to fix itself. No way. It took an absolute army of advocates. And these weren't people just writing polite letters from home. Oh no. They took the fight right inside the Capitol. They became the hallway warriors. Look, let's just be real for a second about how Washington, D.C. actually works. Bills don't get passed just because it's the right thing to do, especially not multi-billion-dollar bills. Good intentions, moral arguments, they're usually not enough. They pass when activists make it impossible for them not to pass. You have to make the political pain of doing nothing way worse than the financial cost of doing something. And that is exactly what these warriors did. So what was their playbook? Well, led by guys like John Field, and with the full force of unions like the International Association of Firefighters, it was just relentless. Forget polite scheduled meetings. They were literally cornering politicians in the hallways. They weren't just throwing around statistics, they were pulling out photos of their dying friends. And here's the brilliant part. They brought in sick fighters from places like Ohio and Florida to prove this wasn't just a New York problem. No, this was an American problem. All that pressure from the ground, from the hallways, that cracked the door open. But you still need a really smart political strategy to actually walk through that door and get a bill passed. And that's where Senators Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand came in with this, frankly, brilliant political pincer move. Okay, move number one. They didn't call it a new spending bill. They called it the Correction Act. Smart, right? It sounds like you're just fixing a typo, not authorizing billions of dollars. Move number two, they constantly hammered home the idea that this was about a sacred obligation, a promise the country had already made. And finally, they showed that if this program collapsed, it wouldn't just be a health crisis. It would be an economic disaster for New York's entire hospital system.
All right, now let's pull the camera back. Because this whole fight, it wasn't just about a line item in the US budget. This had everything to do with America's reputation, its power and credibility on the world stage.
And you might be thinking, hang on, a health bill for New York? What does that have to do with geopolitics? Well, it all comes down to one simple thing: keeping your promises. Think about it. A huge part of a nation's credibility is how it treats its own heroes. If America walks away from the very first responders who ran into the towers on 9/11, what message does that send to the world? It broadcasts weakness. And you can bet our rivals are watching. They use this stuff as propaganda. See? The great American empire is failing. It can't even take care of its own people. So by keeping this promise, the US wasn't just doing the right thing. It was sending a powerful, if subtle, signal of strength and stability.
But here's the thing. Just when you think the story's over, there's a twist. The celebration for getting the money was, well, it was pretty short-lived. Because as soon as the war in Congress was won, a new, sneakier battle began. This time, it wasn't about money. It was about people.
And this right here, this is the bizarre paradox they're facing now. On one hand, victory. They got the $3 billion. The program is funded for years to come. But on the other hand, a massive federal hiring freeze, all in the name of government efficiency, has apparently cut the program staff by a quarter. Yeah, this quote really says it all. The battle has shifted from get the money to let them spend it. The fight isn't with Congress anymore. The new front line is the executive branch, specifically the Department of Health and Human Services. It's about getting them to actually hire the people needed to run the clinics and handle the paperwork. And the impact of this on real people, it's just devastating. This isn't just some abstract bureaucratic problem. A lack of staff means wait times are skyrocketing. We're talking people waiting up to 6 months just to get their first screening for a cancer that could kill them. For these patients, time is the one resource they absolutely do not have. So this table really lays it out perfectly, doesn't it? The whole 25-year fight has evolved. The enemy used to be a lack of money, and the battleground was Congress. Now, the enemy is a lack of people, and the battleground has shifted to the executive branch. When you boil it all down, this whole saga proves a point these advocates have been making for 20 years. Never forget is more than just a phrase on a bumper sticker. It has to be a line item in the budget, and it has to be a priority for the bureaucracy that's supposed to serve the people. And that leaves us with a really tough question, one that gets to the very heart of what kind of country we want to be. How do we balance this idea of government efficiency with what everyone agrees is a sacred obligation to our heroes? At what point does cutting costs become a betrayal? It's clear the 25-year war for 9/11 health is still a long way from being over.